E continuamos a olhar para o digital.
So we continue to look to the world of digital economy to see what's best for Europe and for Portugal, the resilience and recovery plan. How can we see that the digital is so essential for this resilience and recovery plan? When we think about growing and growing swiftly after the pandemic, and with the war in the Ukraine, we have to explore these resilience and recovery plans. The President of the Portuguese Republic made it clear yesterday, and how digital is of the essence for this to happen. So we'll see this in more detail in the next few minutes, and that's why we have the keynote speaker, Wanda Jesus, Executive Director of Portugal Digital. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor. It's always an honor to come back to this meeting. I'd like to thank Rogério and Sandra and all the team at APDC for this conference that has been ongoing for 31 years. There's 31 editions already. It's an honor to be with you, and more so with more people face to face. It's also an honor to introduce you to this topic, the digital transition that we've been working on for the last 2 years. But it's difficult for me to be alone on stage, because this is the product of teamwork with many collaborator entities that I am representing. They have been the ones to make it possible to implement and execute this plan for the digital transition. I'd like to say that many of you know these pillars for the digital transition. The first pillar is to empower and qualify people, to bring the digital to people's everyday life, from those who know nothing about the digital and those who are professionals. Businesses are the second pillar, the digital transformation, and the third pillar is the state. So we have the brains in the people, the cohesion in the companies, the heart that pumps the blood, and then the skeleton is the state. These have been two intensive years. The Secretary of State yesterday approached many of these projects, and I'm going to make the most of this opportunity to explain the reinforcement that we have had for these programs through the Resilience and Recovery Plan. These 28 programs, when the transition plan was submitted in March of 2020, were only a dozen projects, flagship projects, but we've had an increased intensity and the need to accelerate those that were there, and also to implement new ones for a 4-year period. As you see, many of them are already executed or implemented or close to being so. And so we add a set of projects to follow up many of them that are growing and to reinforce the investment. As you can see, those that have an orange circle have been reinforced with further funding from the Resilience and Recovery Plan. And so this slide shows, well, just a minute. I'm going to focus my presentation on the business side, so the RRP programs, but I have to refer to a set of projects that have been implemented and were referred yesterday by the Secretary of State. The upskilling in number 1, which has been important to upskill all the companies, or many of the companies in APDC. The representatives are here coordinating this project, and this enables us to renew the hope. Despite the lack of talent, the project started more than 2 years ago when it was initially conceived, and the idea was to get together with the public administrations that supports the funding for this upskilling. And so the people are now working in technology companies and in totally different sectors. And we have increased this pool, so to speak. At the time, we said that we needed to increase the pool so we wouldn't be all fighting for the same resources. And so we ended up with this project with 430 people that are now working at the companies, and a lot more that are being trained and upskilled. So we're starting even with some people that have no training whatsoever with these digital inclusion centers and the mentors. And what can we do on the day-to-day basis? And we can do lots of other things. We can at least convince our colleagues and friends and become mentors to draw new people. We have our family members that can also be needing such kind of assistance. So going into the details, I like this slide, and I think it gives you an overview of what we're speaking about, the C's, C15, C18. The aim here is, by the life cycle of the company, understand what are the products that are de facto included in the RRP. So this may be about digitalization or innovation that we're also talking about. So you can see here some of the projects that are being funded by the Resilience and Recovery Plan, and others that had already been expected under other plans, such as the innovation hubs or the technology centers that were mentioned yesterday. In the case of digitization, you see that we also need for digital transformation to qualify and upskill. We have two programs here, digital employment and digital leaders, more digital leaders, more digital employment. And allow me now to show you this other slide that sums up all the things that are under the RRP. And for well-trained people that you are, you probably know about this. But what is here? Everything that has to do, these are components that have a strong digital side to them, and they're a part of the digital transition, part of the 16 billion. And on the left, we can see the C16 component, 4.0 companies. We have the four large items, digital upskilling of people, the digital transformation of companies, and catalyzing, for a total of several hundred million euros investment. I'll give you now an overview of them all. Here we have Rogerio, who has a twofold role. He's a member of the National Follow-up Company in the world of digital transformation. And this slide can help us to understand all the situation. In the case of C16, the 4.0 companies, we've had a great effort to try to identify measures and initiatives to solve specific problems that we were experiencing. The action plan was already ongoing when the resilience and recovery plans brought the funding. This, of course, complicated things a little, but it's just apparently we need to be together, and all these institutions that you see on the left are essential to implement all the measures. The way in which this was sped up was to create a governance model whereby the Portugal Digital is a part of the coordination of this C16, and all the beneficiaries, even the intermediate institutions that have contracted all C16, and we also work with each one of the organizations in their specific responsibilities. What you can see on the right-hand side is a transparent view of our working groups. We have 5 working groups: digital upskilling, digital commerce, entrepreneurship, digital transition, and catalyzation. And then the responsibilities. So the first, we have the world of academia, the more digital implement with IEFP, the digital neighborhoods with the Director General for Economic Activities, internationalization via e-commerce with ISEP, the entrepreneurship measures with the Startup Portugal, SUP, and then support to business models and other test benches, and then the digital innovation hubs with EAPME. The dematerialization is with the EMPO and also AMA, and the certification seals with INCM. If you want more details, I can show you, for the case of C16, each one of these macro projects. In the case of the digital upskilling, we have two major measures with this reinforced funding. We have the Digital Portugal Academy. This academy is a platform that was referred to yesterday. It's a platform that enables to bring together at the training, it's not at the training centers, we bring together all that which is digital training in different areas, all the way from basic training to more advanced training, with a very important component which is a diagnosis tool of our digital skills. And then the follow-up of that, which is our ideal journey in terms of digital skills related to our professional streak. The professional journey, we have recommendations for trainings that could be applicable for future skills. We're also preparing a study for the follow-up. We work a lot with these agencies that spoke about the impact of the automation at work. And so we are preparing a study on the employability and what are the skills needed for the current duties, not the technological ones, but the actual functions that are not necessarily technological, but we need that are necessary for any kind of business, because everything is becoming digital, and this is also the way to change the professions. In Europe, it is said that in 10 years' time, 90% of the jobs in Europe will have a digital component to them, and that's what we're working on. The aim is to reach 800,000 students and 30,000 companies. In the case of more digital employment, the name is Digital Employment Plus 2025. This project has a pilot already ongoing in partnership with CIP and CCP. CIP, I see Carlos Sequeira, the Secretary General, and we also have the chair with us, who's going to speak soon. This has been the great supporter to test the model of a more digital employment, aiming to reach all companies and their workers to have the necessary training with what we are identifying under the study and that we have been testing in this last year. The mission is a large one because we have the aim to reach 200,000 participants of active population to integrate this program with 94 million euros of funding. The second topic, digital commerce. Here we have three measures. We have the so-called digital commercial neighborhoods. Out of 130 candidacies, we've had a lot of interest. We have selected 50 digital neighborhoods. We have another measure that was just launched, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, because the deadline was the 1st of July. These are the accelerators of digital commerce. We're going to create accelerators across the country so they may assist SMEs in the business sector to become digitalized. We're speaking about a support to 30,000 SMEs with 55 million euros. So the amount will be between 1,000 and 2,000 euros per company, but this is to start with, and it may be supplemented with other measures such as Coaching 4.0. The idea here is to be close to the accelerators. The candidacies are going to be submitted soon, and they will provide support. And this, of course, is intertwined and linked, as you saw at the beginning, with the training and upskilling that we're also providing at the same time for the leaders and for the digital commerce. We have a focus with companies that are becoming internationalized. This is a project led by ICEP, and the idea is to help these companies, be it to reach new markets, be it to become, if they are internationalized, to sell new products. An innovation that we have is to facilitate the access of these micro businesses and enterprises to funding. We are making an effort to be very simple. We're going to create a digital online service catalog which will have the pre-qualified suppliers, so the accelerators and the coaching will be much easier through the catalog to choose to see which guidance or which service may be implemented. And so we are working on this view to roll it out throughout this year. In the area of entrepreneurship, we have addressed this yesterday also, how important it is to create ESNA, the European structure that we brought to Portugal. It's going to be there in the former Lisbon Expo. We have reinforcement of our Startup Portugal, but also support to the ecosystem, be it through the incubator accelerators, but also with green and digital vouchers. We're going to add blue, green, and digital. It was not there originally, but we developed this because the C is very important for us as well. And I must speed up. In the case of the digital transition and innovation, we have just launched a workshop on these three areas that are available on our website with questions and answers. The mission is great. We have a lot to do from here to September. We have test beds. And coaching is also there to support the digital transition of the companies, but any activity sector may apply. And this is also to follow up the employment projects. So many of them will be redirected, we think, to this project. And I'm now about to conclude. Here are the digital innovation hubs. They are de facto catalyzer projects for digital activities and cybersecurity. This is something that has been launched and has had a lot of demand. We have the opportunity to have 15,000 companies certified. So to wrap up, give you an idea about the other Cs, not the C16, to say that what seems to be something very broken down, but from the viewpoint of the public administration, there is always sustainability for public funding, the digital transition, the digital school, and economic justice and fairness in the business world. We want to speed up these processes to work in an integrated manner together with this great mission that Amma mentioned in the field of C19. We have a single one-stop shop. So I'll now give the floor to my colleagues at the panel for the questions and answer session. Thank you very much.
Vamos então nós.
So let's carry on with the conversation. I think that we're already ready. I'll introduce the speakers. We have Antonio Saraiva, President of SIB, and also Miguel, who's well, a lot has been said about digitalization. Like Sergio said, Dr. Saraiva, we see the plans, we see the funds, we see the budgetary items, and I ask, what's the priority at a time in which we have just exited a pandemic and we have a war in Europe? Is timing the priority for digitization? Good morning, Jean. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here with you. To define priorities in this day and age is almost impossible because the reality is changing day by day. So yesterday's priorities are probably different to today's priorities. And in such a framework, we have to at least be able to foresee the future and define the strategies to see the future that is coming faster, to be better prepared. Undoubtedly, digitalization, be it the means, be it the people, upskilling, is essential because any study, any assessment, and this has been discussed yesterday and today, we are reaching a new disruptive time, and the better the skills, the better the qualifications for this new world that we see, the better. So yes, it is a priority to be prepared, because if we are better skilled with better competencies, the people, the businesses, and the companies that are better prepared will better adapt to these fast changes, and that's why digitalization is very relevant. When we speak of businesses, we cannot be so global. We have small companies, middle-sized companies, and large companies, and there are many differences among them and the state of digitalization of each one. Yes, of course, business fabric is made up of many, many companies, and most of them are micro or mini enterprises. So we have to recover, we have to transform our economy. There is an asymmetry in the size of our businesses, and this leads to different levels of development. The larger and middle-sized companies are changing at a faster pace, and they are adapting and digitalizing more than the smaller companies. The small companies and the micro enterprises also know that if they do not adapt, they obviously have less financial opportunities, but they will be left out of the market if they don't keep up to date. We have a simple example revealed by the pandemic. Small restaurants, their business units, and they continued to operate with takeaway food and things. And yes, they gained new customers, new market niches. And despite their small size, they had to do differently. So we are all obliged, regardless, to adapt, and no one can stay behind. Miguel Traça, obviously, we're already going through a huge remodelation of the economic model and the business model with digitalization that is urgent and necessary. Are we making it there? Is this not going to make some companies be replaced by others? Just a while ago, Sergio Rabelo mentioned that, curiously enough, those companies that have more success, 70% are new companies, and others have disappeared.
Excelente ponto, porque eu acho que o mundo que nós temos hoje é desafio às empresas e aos líderes para resistirem a essa tentação. Nós vamos, de facto, ter aqui processo de... A digitalização é movimento de disrupção extraordinário. E a disrupção significa, os chineses dizem muito, significa crise e significa oportunidade. Significa crise para quem não se mexe, significa oportunidade para quem está ágil e a responder. E ainda por cima, a digitalização surge num ambiente em que surge a digitalização e 300 outros choques à nossa volta. A guerra, o Covid...
Daí eu falar das prioridades.
E, portanto, eu acho que há aqui dois temas. O primeiro tema é... Um dos temas que eu acho que a guerra nos ensina é que vale a pena pensar no longo prazo. Esta guerra surge também por uma quantidade de erros que se fizeram, de muita gente que foi pensando no curto prazo e depois trouxe-nos esta situação. E, portanto, vale a pena pensar no longo prazo e vale a pena continuar focado no longo prazo e vale a pena para as empresas e para os países continuarem focados no longo prazo. O desafio é que o longo prazo está sempre a mudar. Muda com a guerra, muda com a Covid, está sempre a mudar. E, portanto, eu acho que a única forma de estar hoje é estar-se no curto prazo a pensar no longo prazo. Isto é estar-se constantemente a olhar para aquilo que acontece à nossa volta, a pensar onde é que isto nos vai levar e a fazer e a reagir e a agir para nos preparar para essa mudança. Okay? E, portanto, esse é um primeiro tema. E isto traz dois desafios. Esta disrupção de estar no curto prazo sempre a pensar no longo prazo. Traz dois desafios. Um é quem está de fora e aproveita a oportunidade. E nós temos estado a fazer bem, nós temos 6 unicórnios em Portugal, o que significa que nós temos uma enorme capacidade de ter pessoas que estão de fora, temos um ecossistema de startups enorme, e isto são as pessoas que estão de fora, a ver que estas mudanças constantes criam novas oportunidades e a chegar e a criar e a tirar partido dessas oportunidades. São os tais 70% que são novos, que falámos há bocado, esta tendência nova. Isto é muito grande nos Estados Unidos, é forte em Portugal, e hoje é muito maior do que era há 40 anos atrás, porque eu, se tiver uma ideia, tenho todo o talento do mundo ao dispor, tenho todo o capital do mundo ao dispor e posso começar de novo. E aqui eu acho que Portugal também. Mas como vimos, por exemplo, e o automóvel é interessante, quando surge uma Tesla com uma vontade de romper, quem está no terreno, se for suficientemente ágil, se for suficientemente rápido, consegue não perder o mercado. E, portanto, o desafio é também para quem está no mercado, estar atento, estar disponível, transformar as suas empresas em empresas muito mais ágeis, com uma cultura muito mais de empreendedorismo dentro das empresas, para conseguir reagir e não fazer parte dos 30% que desaparecem, dos 30%...
And about 70% this is the world that we have today. And so there's the world that is of a huge disruption. So does this apply to all companies, taking into account the entrepreneurial fabric in Portugal, or when we say it's disruptive, but we need capital, we need attraction, we need flexibility. Up to what extent can the Portuguese entrepreneurial fabric in Portugal. So as we've seen with the unicorns, is that the good ideas in Portugal can go and get the funds and grow. We're talking about 7 or 8, which is greater than Spain and Italy. And this is the challenge. The others have to understand that they have to grow, they have to make business for growth, and they have to be in the market at the medium and long term, or thinking of the short term. The future is not fantastic. And even from the point of view of the country, this renovation is important. This means there has to be a replacement in the country. The countries have an ambition to grow and to become more productive, and they're not here in a status quo of zombies that doesn't grow and doesn't let others grow. And so, Wende, can I just comment on this? So this topic of companies that we are talking about a bankruptcy of a company. Talent cannot be lost. As we create new companies with new business models, of course, the struggle is for innovation. But I think sometimes we are worried about thinking that companies cannot die, but they have to grow more. We mustn't lose talent, as Danielle was saying, both national and what we can actually bring to have the unique characteristics for these unicorns having been born from here. Born here. So the studies have actually shown that during the pandemic, the resilience of countries had a very strong digital component to startups, etc. But they were ready for the changes, as Tony was saying, which are going to be constant. So as sales continue to grow. So the idea that suddenly e-commerce is the future is coming back to normal levels. Well, I'm quoting Sergio Cubel, who showed us this graph. Well, I'm back to Antonio Saraiva. So I'd like to know up to what point are we in terms of digitalization? Is it good for our recovery? But in terms of entrepreneurial fabric, but in terms of this plan of recovery and resilience, we expect an opportunity, a unique opportunity. And so up to what extent can this plan help us improve this digital course? Well, we're at a point of development, and we talk an awful lot about digitalization. The PRR is going to mention this, climate transition, digital transition, resilience, and it's bringing these, it's focusing on these 3 dimensions. But companies had already been digitalized. We had talked about 4.0, and so we're talking about this before. I'm not saying that's not the case, but I'm saying in comparison with other markets and other companies, so where are we in terms of competitiveness? Are we lagging behind, in front? Is it the same level? What? You can't. We have different realities, micro, medium-sized realities, but I think we're comparing well with Europe. And as Wende said, all these opportunities, and Jean said this last opportunity, I don't know whether PRR is the last opportunity, but we have a window of opportunity, and by using it well, we're going to make quantum leaps in these questions, because we have these possibilities. We do have this possibility, so we need to develop even more. But I think this is exactly what we're doing. We in the social, the media. It's not criticism. The media doesn't publish the good examples that we have. Well, some we do have. So, as I said, this is not a criticism, but the fact that Portugal has excellent things, we have excellent companies, innovative, etc. And so innovation should be a priority, because just like everything, the product and the service and the value proposal that companies deliver innovation is absolutely obligatory for all entities, and we understand this well, and we must continue to develop, and that is why we must continue to collaborate, and we have to qualify and re-qualify the population, regardless of whether we're talking about workers or employers. We have to improve all their skills, and because this is the battle of qualification and re-qualification, that will bring better levels of productivity. And the study that was made with Innova, that is the different forms and the new jobs that are going to appear need new skills, and this idea of more digital jobs. And so they are going to prepare us for the new future, which is going to arrive very quickly. We're more competitive, and that's the problem of the companies, the growth. And so it is going to, we need concrete actions to improve the qualification, which is the pillar of this better productivity and competitiveness. People who are more capable, more competitive companies means that the country itself will be more competitive, and we have to work in this. And so, Danielle, these studies that were made of Portuguese companies in order to make this digital transition, quite often we look at human capital. That is more and more difficult to have a qualified or re-qualified human resources. Is this a great difficulty? Well, this question is very important. So we have the idea that the digital transformation is a phenomenon of human capital and technological phenomenon. And it is, but not especially. I think it's the other two factors. I'm going to stop here. No, I'll do this at the end. So, digital transformation is technology to talent, but it's cultural leadership, I believe the gentleman is saying. We have organizations that live with an agility, with norms of social norms that encourage innovation, the spirit of innovation. This, the youth in the terminal, as the norms of the rules of the organization, allows the organization to be alive. It's not it's not one of these control centers that you have to go and answer a paper to be signed. No, I think in Portugal we have a myth. We have a myth that if we educate everything's going to happen. That's not true. We educate everybody, and the problem that we have now, that the people that we educate are working in companies, for companies in Germany, or working in Germany. And so, but if there's no context with their interest, innovative, ambitious projects, we won't be able to retain them. And why can't we retain them? For financial reasons? Well, financial reasons come because of the lack of projects and culture that bring about this scale. If we want to have small companies, the companies to not open room for young people to gain autonomy, to have autonomy, and so there's command control, and they have to go and ask the leader to go left or go right, and the boss is the boss. He's not a leader. And I think most of the Portuguese companies have this culture. We have the talent, we have the technology, but the talent goes away and the technology stays here. So you're pointing out that there is a problem of leadership. Yes, there's a problem of leadership, which is new in Portugal. Of course, there's a problem of leadership. So we have a problem of education. That is, many of the structures and middle-sized companies, average-sized companies, are from a different generation. And it takes a long time to pass on to younger people. And many of these companies cannot, therefore, look at the world and with the necessary dynamism. So we have a problem of leadership and a problem of culture. We have a culture which is a lot of very formal, and companies need more space to allow these youngsters to follow their dreams, embrace their projects. We have this lack of spirit. The spirit of a startup can move on to a big company in Portugal and can be accessible. And in this way, we'll have a digital revolution. And of course, as soon as they get an offer to go and work abroad, they go. So we have to change the way of working. Just to conclude, I think that one of the challenges of the PRR is that we are working well in training, but the part of the transformation of the state, if we keep the same way of the state working and assessing people and the fear of innovating, nothing's going to change. So this is good. So when we look at the plan, we have the private part and the state part, public part. And so is the state is the biggest part. And so up to what extent do we have a digitalization, but we don't have a culture, and so nothing happens. Well, so it's a question: what is private, what is public in PR? And as I'm particularly involved in part of the companies, it's easy to see the direct impact on companies. Now, I think that's what we see, and in order to be quick, the whole component that goes from CD17 of finances, social security and justice, all the projects that are there, and I would say that 90%, 95% of projects there have to be done with the corporate sector, and so the projects are going to have a great impact on national companies and the companies that are going to provide these services. So you're talking by contract. That is by way of the development of the sector. Now, when this contract is done, then it moves on to the state to be more productive in digitalization. So we're convinced that, yes, this CD18 business environments, all the work of rendering companies agile, so the whole corporate cycle is easier to start and end. And so this, I believe, that this whole impact in terms of contracting, but will benefit the way that public services are going to get to people and citizens and companies. So I really believe in this. Just one more thing, responding to this is the problem of talent, problem of leadership. And one of the things that I mentioned, that in addition to what we was talking about, we don't get it's not worthwhile getting people when we don't have good leaders. And so there's another very important thing is to make a plan. And so, but you don't change the leaders with digitalization. It's much more than this. And so it has to have a culture. António Saraiva, so how are we going to change the leaders for companies and talent? Can change the question of culture. What's the plan of the transition of leadership? We all agree with the effects that we can have. We can disagree with the causes. Now, I agree, understand what Danielle is saying. So in the leadership of companies, we have a generation that knew the business. They didn't risk, they didn't, they created, they had the bravery of creating companies. And we do not. There's a lot of merit here which we don't recognize, and so some of them are rather out of date, but I think that the companies continue to progress, and we can only have a number of analysis. But new generations that arrive, and the children, grandchildren, and a number of situations. And so there's a transition, which is cultural, because Portuguese companies, and it's not only a question of remuneration, because we don't retain talent, because we don't change much, but to the Portuguese consumer, if the product is German or foreign, they're ready to pay more. If it's Portuguese, they have to pay less. And so there's a culture that has to be assessed, and the causes have to be praised because they hide realities. And so it's not only remuneration, it's housing policy, mobility. There are a number of questions that have to be addressed to understand why our youngsters don't stay in Portugal. They have other challenges. So Portugal is paying more and more. It handed over €2 billion from the first quarter in 2020 until 2019. We have unemployment, which is going. In a while, I'm going to talk about Thailand and requalification of people. But on the contrary, you mentioned that we only give the bad examples. Portuguese companies have managed to attract foreign labour force. North Americans, they get higher. Yes. And the students they attract to the companies. We were talking about the automobile sector. Others, they've moved from combustion to electric. So today, any economic activity shows us that it requires a labour force. Most of us is qualified, but we don't have the labour force in Portugal, and the automobile sector showing this example. Now, my colleague from AFIA said that it is contract hiring people from abroad because they don't find people in Portugal for this transformation. And Portugal is changing. We have the qualifications we have. We have a number of different potentials that attract to the quality of life that Portugal offers. So we have a number of positive factors which attract this labour force. We are attracting them, yes, because there's not all cases, because Portuguese companies, those who have managed to be differentiated in products and etc. There's companies that find themselves in a situation of transformation. We are managing, and because of them, we have managed to attract foreign talent. So we will be left with this positive message. We are in the right way. We're moving forward. We're going to be better in Portugal. Thank you very much.